everyone, and welcome to the ANCP Accreditation webinar. Before I hand over the microphone to Rebecca from the ANCP team, we'll just go through some webinar housekeeping. The first one is about the chat area, which Daniel has already discovered. The chat area you can use to let us know if you have any technical difficulties throughout the webinar. And I'll just ask someone to type into the chat area now to confirm that we have sound coming through nice and clear. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. You can also use the chat area to ask any questions throughout the webinar. If you want to find out anything extra or clarify something, just pop it into the chat area. And we can also do a little bit of Q&A at the end of the webinar as well. Speaking of the end of the webinar, we do have a survey at the very end of the webinar. Helps us improve the offerings that we have for you guys. So if you stick around to do the 1-minute survey at the end of the webinar, that would be brilliant. And we also just have a quick reminder that we'll be recording this webinar, and the recording will go up on the ACFED YouTube channel sometime in the next week. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Rebecca for the start of the ANCP Accreditation webinar.
Hi everyone, it's Rebecca Lysaght here. As Jess introduced me, I'm from the ANCP team and I'm the current manager of accreditation, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you a bit about the process. Today I'll also have Belinda Lucas, who is one of our independent accreditation assessors, presenting as well, so you'll hear from both of us today. If I am going too fast or if it isn't clear, please let me know just by typing into the little chat boxes, as Jess said. So first of all, what we're planning on doing today, it's quite a broad presentation. We're happy to receive questions as we go. We also have tried to target this presentation at both new applicants for accreditation and also applicants who have applied before, but we're not going to be able to cover off everything. So as I said before, please ask any questions. We're going to do a brief overview of accreditation. We're going to look at the 2018 review of accreditation, the streamlining and red tape reduction that occurred, the improvements to the accreditation criteria and process that were made, preparing for accreditation, and the application process going forward. So, accreditation at a glance. If you haven't been involved with the ANCP before, I'll just give you a little bit of a spiel on that. So ANCP, the Australian NGO Cooperation Program, is DFAT's longest running NGO engagement. Been running for about 43 years. This year we have a budget of 132.5 million for the ANCP, which was an increase from last year. So it's also a really highly regarded program, both from within DFAT and obviously by our minister as well. To participate in the ANCP, NGOs have to be accredited. So that's where this process comes in, and accreditation is valid for 5 years, and NGOs have to be re-accredited every 5 years to stay in the program. DFAT, Australian NGO Accreditation, and ACFED Code of Conduct provide standards of practice and quality assurance that's globally unique. So this is a well-respected process around the world. Accreditation provides both DFAT and also the Australian public with confidence that NGOs are well-managed and effective organisation and are accountable to stakeholders. We have 2 levels of accreditation, which new applicants may have read of and existing applicants are probably familiar with, so that's full or base level. The difference between the two, So full level accreditation has additional indicators that NGOs need to respond to, but there's also a funding difference. So if you're a base accredited organisation, currently you will receive $150,000 as a grant from the ANCP. With full level organisations, it's $300,000 plus a proportion of the ANCP funding pie based on something that we call recognised development expenditure, which is basically money raised here in Australia and then spent on development projects overseas. There's a whole range of rules around recognised development expenditure, and I think we do have a webinar on that at some point in the year, but all that information on RDE is also available on the DFAT website. Accreditation has some pre-eligibility requirements, which we'll go through later on, and a set of accreditation criteria and indicators with a lot of support documentation, which we hope ensures transparency and a shared understanding of the process. All right, eligibility. So first of all NGOs applying for DFAT accreditation must be registered with the Australian Charities Not-for-Profit Commission. They also need to be a signatory to the ACFID Code of Conduct and meet the annual compliance regulations around that. Organisations also need at least a 2-year track record of managing development activities. Needs to be an Australian organisation with an ABN, not be included on any of the international sanctions lists, and have a minimum RDE averaged over 3 years of $50,000 for base organisations and $100,000 for full. So as I said before, all the information on the RDE calculations and how you actually calculate that can be found on the DFAT website. All right, key principles of accreditation. So accountability and transparency. So NGOs are assessed against an agreed set of criteria. This criteria has been agreed by the Committee for Development Cooperation, which is a joint DFAT NGO body, and also internally by DFAT. Risk management. So accreditation is DFAT's front-end risk management process, and we're assured of an NGO's capacity to implement development programs and are therefore confident to fund NGOs from the ANCP. I should also note here that accreditation for DFAT is equivalent to DFAT's due diligence assessment. So NGOs who are successful at obtaining accreditation also meet that standard, and other programs will use that process instead of having to redo a due diligence check. The next principle is peer assessment. So review team members that we DFAT contract are experienced NGO and development professionals. So you'll be hearing from one a bit later on. And then, as I mentioned before, the CDC, the Committee for Development Cooperation, also oversees the accreditation process, ensuring quality and consistency. Collaboration and participation.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Hello everyone and welcome to the ANCP Accreditation webinar. Before I hand over the microphone to Rebecca from the ANCP team, we'll just go through some webinar housekeeping. The first one is
Hi everyone, can I get someone to check whether you can all hear me again now? Someone can respond? Okay, great, I'm back. I was just on a roll. Okay, it's a bit scratchy I'm hearing. I'll just try and adjust the headset. So what was the last thing that people heard me say? Anyone tell me? Okay, started on collaboration and participation. Okay, great. So I didn't talk for too much longer after that. So I'll just start again and hopefully I stay connected this time. So collaboration and participation. The review team works with each NGO to understand their individual approaches. So I was saying that it's not one size fits all review. So we do look at differences of organisations and try to fit them into our current criteria. Assessments is evidence-based. So that means that we're reviewing, or the review teams assess NGOs through the review of documented evidence and discussion. So we're not just looking at a policy, we're looking at how those policies are implemented and evidence of that implementation. So that's a really key point. As I said before, recognition of the diversity of the NGO sector in assessing against criteria. So we're not looking at a one approach for the sector. Continuous learning and capacity improvement within the sector. So the process of preparing for accreditation, we see it supporting the NGOs to reflect on current practice and to strengthen it. So the actual process, we often get feedback once it's over, but it's been really useful for organisations. And good practice. So accreditation is regularly reviewed to continue to reflect sector good practice. So we're trying to keep up with the changes in the sector. So getting on to the criteria itself, we have 15 overall criteria, each with clear indicators. Now you can find all this information in our fabulous accreditation manual that's found on our website. And we were pointing out today that if you search for the accreditation manual, it pops up with our 2016 version because the IT section didn't take that one down and they replaced it with the 2018 version. So just make sure if you're looking at the manual, it is the 2018 version. We're fixing that at the moment, so in the next day or so, you won't have a problem. So in terms of the criteria, all criteria must be met. There are additional indicators for the full level. We also have one red line criterion. So red line means it's an automatic fail of the whole accreditation process if you don't meet that criterion. and that criterion is around child safeguarding. So we're pretty confident that NGOs currently in the program are completely across child safeguarding, and certainly new organisations are across child safeguarding as well. So that's why we've made it a red line criterion, and just given its overall importance. So the areas of practice within that 15 criteria that we look at are governance and risk management, development approaches and management, approaches to partnership and collaboration, which is really important, communications, and financial management as well. On the screen now, I've got a rough overview of the process and the timeline. So the first stage is submitting an application or an agency profile, which is done online. The next stage, DFAT, as I've mentioned before, contracts a review team to undertake the review. So we have 2 development specialists and a financial assessor as part of that review team, along with the DFAT observer. So that review team, once the application's in and DFAT's checked it against the eligibility criteria and just making sure it's been completed properly, the review team will undertake a desk assessment. Following the desk assessment, which can take up to 4 weeks from the eligibility check, the NGO will receive the desk assessment report, which will outline an initial view of where the NGO is against each of the criteria and areas where more evidence is required. 4 to 6 weeks after that, hopefully, if everything aligns correctly, there'll be an organisation review, which is where the review team comes to the NGO's head office and sits there for 2 to 3 days to review additional evidence and documentation, have discussions with everyone from the board down to program managers and finance officers. Following the OR, the assessing team writes a report that DFAT reviews, and then we send that out to the NGO. The NGO has a right to respond to that report, correct any factual errors, and then if there's any differences of opinion there, can certainly write a response to that as well. That report will go to the next Committee for Development Cooperation meeting, where the committee will review and make a recommendation to the DFAT delegate about the accreditation status of that organisation. The delegate will then review that recommendation and make a final decision. So that's the overall process. While it looks fast on the screen, that can take 6 to 9 months to do. Just often we find we have to move dates of the OR around to suit organisations. Then we've only hold 3 CDCs a year, so we've got to fit into all those processes. So it's certainly not a fast process, but it is worthwhile. All right, so I'm going to hand over now. I think, no, I'm not. I've got a couple more slides. I'll hand over in a couple more slides. You'll get a different voice. All right, so 2018 review of accreditation. It was 2017 it started, late November, but it really kicked off early in 2018. What we did, we had a review because it was timely, but also to make sure that there are a few areas that we covered off. So first of all, risk. We needed to make sure that accreditation criteria continued to meet DFAT's needs to manage and mitigate risk, including reputational risks, safeguarding, financial risks, including terror financing, and personal safety and security. We also looked at improvements to the criteria, so ensuring the accreditation criteria and review process continued to reflect good sector practice. We also wanted to check that the accreditation criteria continued to align with DFAT's comprehensive due diligence assessment. And lastly, we looked at streamlining and red tape reduction. So reducing duplication within the accreditation criteria and across other NGO compliance requirements. So for those of you familiar with the old criteria, some of the criteria were duplicated throughout, so just trying to reduce and streamline those. The review process was extremely comprehensive. We had a NGO reference group, which was made up of all the members of NGO reps from the Committee for Development Cooperation. We had a representative from the Development Policy Committee, and we also had a couple of small agencies involved as well. We surveyed all currently accredited NGOs and a couple of organisations that had recently been unsuccessful in the process, and we had 42 responses overall. The reviewers who undertook the review also spoke to a wide range of DFAT operational areas and overseas DFAT posts. So from program areas within DFAT to some of our posted offices as well. We consulted with the ACNC, the ACFID Code of Conduct Committee and Co-Secretariat, all current accreditation reviewers as well. So we tried as much as we could to speak to as many people as possible. A discussion paper was drafted by the reviewers identifying 21 issues and recommendations, and feedback on this discussion paper was invited from accredited NGOs, the reference group, the ACNC, ACFID, and DFAT as well. We also sent a revised copy of the accreditation criteria to all CEOs back in late January, early February, to make sure everyone was aware of what was going on. All the revised criteria was approved by the CDC in May, and we've now, as you all would have seen, have a revised criteria, framework, guidance manual and agency profile available online. Alright, so you're going to have a change of voice now. I'm going to hand over to Belinda Lucas, who's going to take you through some of the changes to the criteria. Thanks.
Hello everyone, let me know if you can't hear me, and as Rebecca said earlier, really welcome any questions as we progress through the next batch of slides. So as Rebecca highlighted earlier, one of the drivers for the recent review of the accreditation process was streamlining and red tape reduction. So the outcome of that was that 2 criteria were removed. Criterion A1 was removed because the aspects that were considered in that criterion were assessed by the ACNC, so we sought to reduce duplication there. And if you look at that last dot point, criterion E4 has been removed. Criterion E4 was where the RDE threshold was assessed, but this will now be assessed as a pre-eligibility requirement and linked to a broader RDE review process that is already undertaken normally through the ANCP cycle. But for new NGOs, an RDE assessment will need to be undertaken during that pre-eligibility check. But going back up to the second dot point, again, as Rebecca said, there were a couple of cross-cutting areas that were that featured in a number of criteria in the old framework. So in the new framework, responding really to much of the feedback from NGOs, we sought to consolidate those areas in single criteria. So risk management, as some of you will see, is now housed, if you like, in its own criterion. So it's addressed centrally. Child protection is now addressed in standalone criteria. And tourism financing, which used to appear, I think, in 3 or 4 criteria, now features in only 1 criterion. So there's quite a bit of streamlining just of the practice areas that were considered across accreditation criteria. And then finally, the third dot point, a major change is that the agency profile has been revised to ensure clearer alignment between questions and criteria. So this means actually that quite a few questions have been taken out of the profile, both to avoid duplication and also to make it clear that each question has a direct relationship to a criterion. So those overall are the key changes from a streamlining perspective. So what I'll do now is just run through over the next few slides the key changes that were made to accreditation criteria, and this will be particularly relevant for those of you who are super familiar with the criteria, and for those of you that are new, perhaps just an opportunity to get to know some of the criteria in a more detailed way. So A2 is a new criterion. We've called it Enterprise Risk Management, and it really is a home, if you like, for all aspects of risk management at an organisational level. So it now includes the organisation's overall approach to risk management from an organisation perspective. It now looks at staff integrity and in particular safeguarding processes regarding sexual exploitation, abuse and also harassment, and I know all of you will recognise the relevance and importance of that for the sector at this time, and certainly too for DFAT. So staff integrity was an aspect within the old criteria framework, but wasn't particularly explicit, so it now is much more explicit. It has its own indicator, and safeguarding also has its own indicator now, so that's a new indicator. There was also a new indicator in this criterion around high-risk context. So this really reflects, I think, the reality of the diversity and complexity of organisations and the places that they work in, and just acknowledging that there's a need for NGOs to have additional analysis and identification of risk and risk measures in those contexts. So we would expect to see much of this in place already by NGOs that DFAT works with. The key to this change being that it's now centralised in one place and makes some of those things that were implicit more explicit. A3 is the new criteria on child safeguarding, and as Rebecca already mentioned, this is the only criterion in the whole framework that is considered a red line criterion. The child protection aspects were filtered through various aspects of criterion B and C in the past. It's now housed in one location. So essentially this criterion asks that an organisation has a child protection policy that's compliant with the DFAT policy, similarly that it has procedures in place that fully complies with DFAT's policy, and additionally that the NGO has procedures to ensure that its partners have compliant child protection policy and practices. And additionally, that alongside those policies and procedures in place, that an NGO undertakes a regular assessment of its practice and its partners' practice in this area. So as Rebecca said, this is a red line criterion. There's now a checklist that's been developed specifically for this criterion that's both a feature of a link in the agency profile and also a separate attachment available on the accreditation section of the DFAT website. There were some changes made in criterion B. One aspect that will be familiar or recognisable to some of you is that B used to look at areas of humanitarian practice and it had a link to the core humanitarian standard, and that's now no longer a part of the accreditation framework. Those organisations that are involved in humanitarian work and receive humanitarian funding from DFAT will be assessed through the humanitarian section and not as part of accreditation. The other aspect in B that has changed is that there's now an explicit criteria where the NGO's capacity to manage the expected signs of an ANCP grant will be formally assessed in B2.
And that's probably particularly relevant for those NGOs that are new to the accreditation process, to anticipate what an ANCP grant might look like and to be able to demonstrate capacity that they have the systems and the strategy to effectively manage and program that size of grant. In B3, you'll also see that there's some changes at the full level where, similar to the criterion in child safeguarding, that the NGO is expected to undertake periodic assessments of its own practice and its partners' practice against a whole range of cross-cutting areas. So basically to assess that the policies that are expected in accreditation are implemented by both the ANGO and its partners. In criterion C, this is the criterion that focuses on partnerships. Broadly, the criterion are much the same, but there was feedback from the NGOs that partnerships are increasingly more diverse and continue to evolve in the sector, and the NGOs wanted more scope to be able to describe their partnerships in ways that evolve and that suit their context and their type of work. So the criteria have been broadened, and the indicators and the questions and the profile have been broadened to accommodate that scope for NGOs to describe their approaches to collaboration and partnership. C3 is an important one for organisations to register because this one has been finessed to place a strong emphasis on Australian NGOs demonstrating that they both understand the capacity of their partners and respond to the performance of their partners in program design, delivery and implementation of policy requirements. So this really requires evidence by Australian NGOs to show that they're formally undertaking capacity assessments of their partners and that they're actively working with their partners on an ongoing basis to deliver good development practice and meet risk management and safeguarding policy obligations. So it really tests the ANGO's efforts to both understand and support their partners downstream in a much more explicit way than was reflected in the accreditation framework in the past. That is an important one for you to note. In criterion D, this actually had 3 criteria in the past, so it has been reduced by 1. In the past, section D also looked at the organisation's capacity to continue and maintain community support, and that's been removed because it's considered that that's already tested in the IDE assessment. So now criterion D really just focuses on the NGO's ability to acknowledge and attribute Australian government support and to provide information about its organisation both to stakeholders in Australia and stakeholders overseas, including primary stakeholders, in a way that respects the dignity of communities. Section E is the section on finance, criterion E. And again, similar to the criterion we talked about in C, there's an increased focus in the financial management section on reviewing and testing approaches of Australian NGOs to the way that they assess financial risk and financial management capacity of their partners. So again, it has a stronger downstream focus, not to testing the partners overseas, but to understanding the systems of Australian NGO to best understand and support their partners' financial management practices and risk management practices. There's also aspects in here, as there is in C, that relate to the NGO's efforts to strengthen and understand the capacity of their partners in these areas. And finally, E3 is now the criterion which will assess terrorism financing risk. So again, this was featured in B before in the programmatic area, and it's now been centralised in finance, recognising that the policy relates to terrorism financing and the processes that are in place to prevent terrorism financing often relate closely to financial management systems. tourism screening is obviously still an expectation that sits outside financial management systems, but it is centrally located in one area in E3. If anyone's got any questions about those criteria, please send them through in the comments box. We're now moving towards just highlighting other improvements that have been changed, some of which I've already discussed. You'll now see that each agency profile question directly links to the criterion, so it provides you with scope to provide your response to the indicators in each criterion. The questions have also been broadened to increase scope for NGOs to describe their unique and diverse operating and funding models. So they're less prescriptive now and just provide broader opportunities for NGOs to really describe their particular approaches, structures, governance arrangements and partnerships and collaborations. One thing that organisations who have been accredited in the past will note is that there's an increase now in documentary evidence required to be attached within the agency profile. And this was really in response to NGO feedback that there was a very heavy load in the organisational review process where organisations were producing hundreds of documents. So a complete review was undertaken of all documents reviewed in the entire accreditation process, and those that could be easily assessed at the DA stage have now been flagged, and those that could be assessed at the DA stage and which would have a meaningful contribution to assessors' ability to assess against a criterion have been moved to the DA stage. So you will see that there's a larger number of documents to be attached to the agency profile, and this is intended to spread the load more evenly across the process. You'll find also, if you refer to the agency, the accreditation manual, is that there's now a core set of documents that will be required at the OR. And this again was in response to NGO feedback that they would like more support and preparation for the OR process. So rather than wait for the DA report that was provided 4 weeks prior to the OR and a list of documents provided the organisations would then collect and prepare for review, this is all now available in the accreditation manual. So as soon as you start to think about your next preparation for accreditation, you'll be able to see that full list of documents that would normally be assessed at the OR ready in the manual. The other main change in the manual is that there's more guidance on each of the criteria to provide more support and assistance to NGOs in being able to prepare for the accreditation, and there's also more advice within the manual on useful approaches when organisations start thinking about preparing for accreditation. There's a question here from Melanie who's asked that where there's a new criteria that was not a previous requirement, what is the expectation to demonstrate consistent practice for 2 to 3 years? And the response from the assessors would be that in most cases these criteria are expected practice and are mostly reflected in the Active Code of Conduct and also reside in the contractual agreements that organisations have with DFAT. So the expectation from DFAT, organisations have with DFAT. So the expectation from DFAT is that most of these will already be existing in practice in organisations. But certainly in the transition process, the assessors will have some leverage to look at the number of years to which documented evidence is available. So they'll be obviously be subjective and judgment based, but in a very collaborative way, both with the organisation and with DFAT. And Rebecca will be back on the speaker in a sec to provide any sort of further clarifying comments on that. So what I'm going to do now is just run through some suggestions for accreditation preparation. Those of you that have been through the process before will have your own tips, and I encourage you to share those with each other. And those of you that are new, these hopefully are a bit helpful as you start thinking about your accreditation journey. We find that most organisations spend at least a year and often longer preparing for accreditation. That involves obviously understanding accreditation parameters and ensuring that systems, policies and practices can be evidenced. Sometimes organisations find that they need to renew or refresh their policies or systems. And again, a good year out is a good opportunity to do that. Many organisations do it before then too. When organisations present their policies and guidelines and templates, it's important that those policies can demonstrate they've been in place for a reasonable period before applying for accreditation. It would be very difficult for an organisation to show demonstrated practice if their policies, systems, guidelines and templates are brand new. We'd expect to see a reasonable application of those policies and templates in place when we assess an organisation. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, there is a focus on documented evidence. This means that organisations need to show that they have documented systems and worked examples to evidence that they meet accreditation criteria. So what many organisations find is that they have practice in place overseas, but that they sometimes need to play catch-up in ensuring that all of that practice is documented so that they can show it to an independent team and verify that they meet the criteria. It's really important if you're the person who's been assigned to prepare the organisation for accreditation, it's really important that you engage the whole organisation in preparation. You will have seen through that quick run through of some of the changes to accreditation that the criteria relate to the whole of organisation. I think as Beck mentioned earlier, we've got criteria related to governance, to program systems, to risk management systems, to the way that organisations partner and develop agreements and partnerships overseas, to the way that you communicate with your public and your supporters, and to the way that your organisation manages its finances. So one of the pitfalls can be parking accreditation into the programs team. It's absolutely a whole of organisation assessment. And one thing that those that are new to accreditation should note that organisations are expected to meet every criterion. So you can't be weak in one area and strong in four and meet the whole criterion on balance. We need to be, organisations need to fully meet all criterion. What organisations find really helpful is working with other organisations or liaising with others who have been through the accreditation process, particularly those that have done it recently, to get insights both into the way that they prepared and the way they experienced the DA process, preparing the agency profile and participating in the organisational review. And that's really where you'll get the best examples of what worked and what didn't work, and also get a feel for the workload that it might involve. And what we found in the past is that organisations in the sector are really welcoming and very helpful to each other. So if you haven't reached out already, I'd encourage you to do so. And ACFED is absolutely a point of contact to help put you in touch with perhaps an organisation that's in your location or an organisation that has a similar structure or program size or portfolio. And finally, many organisations find it helpful to undertake a mock assessment internally before the organisation review actually occurs. And this is great for a couple of reasons. One is it gives you a chance to road test, if you like, your approach to the way that you think about participating in the review. It gives you an opportunity to prepare your documentation and feel confident that you've got the evidence on hand. And it's also a great way to get teams in the organisation feeling comfortable with an accreditation process so that you iron out nerves and questions well before the OR. I would say, and I think we flagged it earlier when Rebecca was talking about collaboration, is The accreditation doesn't operate in an audit style or audit approach. It is highly collaborative. So the teams that come to your organisation have got lots of experience in the NGO sector and have often been a part of an accreditation process before from an NGO perspective. So you'll find that they are highly collaborative and opportunities really to showcase your work and your best practice and really the opportunity to promote and talk about the work that you do with your partners. One thing that's not here, it is in the manual, is that in the accreditation review process, the organisation review process, the team will provide feedback to you along the way. So it's intended to be a no surprises review where you're given every opportunity to understand how the assessment team, the testing team, is understanding the organisation and any areas where they need further clarity. You should have plenty of notice within the scope of the review process to understand that and to provide additional documentation should you need to. I think at this stage I'm handing back to Rebecca to talk about the process for applications going forward.
Thanks, Belinda. I think we'd all agree that was really useful. Okay, so process for applications going forward. So new applications or for organisations that are currently accredited and are looking to apply for an upgrade outside of their normal re-accreditation schedule can be submitted online through our Smarty grant system from the 1st of July 2018 till the 30th of September. We will aim to assess these applications in the order that they're received. New and, I've just got a statement in here about new and upgraded accreditations are subject to budget availability. That should read in 2019-20. So I just didn't update that slide, so whoops. NGOs who are undergoing re-accreditation that agency profile is open now, so you can start preparing it, and all NGOs who are undergoing re-accreditation for the 2018-19 round of re-accreditations have been advised of their accreditation application due date. So if you're unsure of that, just please contact us. And just finally, obviously existing accredited NGOs who successfully re-accredit will remain in the current funding pool. So where do you find accreditation online? So we've got a web address, a shortened one there, so dfat.gov.au/ANCP accreditation. If you go to that website and follow the two links on the page, so new or upgrading NGOs in the 2018 application round and then re-accrediting NGOs. Just a tip, please make sure you select the correct one. If you are a re-accrediting NGO and you start your application in the new or upgrading NGOs round, you will be cut off from that on the 30th of September, so rather than your actual due date. So please make sure you select the correct link. All right, so we've just had a question. Is there still possibility for organisations to access support for preparing accreditation by DFAT/consultant? And if yes, what are the criteria for accessing that support? So yes, we do still have technical assistance available for organisations. And that is outlined on, I think it's page 12, I'm just looking to, of the accreditation manual. So we will provide that for currently non-accredited NGOs seeking to apply for accreditation, or base accredited NGOs with an RDE equal to or less than 150,000 or equal to or less than 5 full-time equivalent staff. What we will provide is up to 5 days of technical assistance based calculated in accordance with DFAT's Aid Advisor Remuneration Framework. And to access this, you need to make an application for technical assistance, which is just an email outlining who you are and why you think you're eligible for technical assistance to accreditation at dfat.gov.au. But as I said, that information is available in the manual if it wasn't clear from me. Alright, so more advice. Any questions can always be sent to accreditation at dfat.gov.au. That's an email address that myself, Rebecca Lysaght, and my colleague Sarah Drees manage, so we'll aim to respond to you as fast as we can through that address. And I've also listed the DFAT accreditation website, which is there on your screen. We're also hoping to hold some information sessions. So for current accredited NGOs, in the most recent ANCP bulletin, which I know you all read, we advised of when those information sessions are being held. For new NGOs, if you're looking at applying and want to find out when those sessions are, because I can't remember the date exactly now and I want to give you the right information, just email accreditation@dfat.gov.au. Then another question from Emily about, is it possible to circulate these slides? Yes, my understanding is that ACFID will publish this presentation to YouTube in the next week or so. And I think Annabelle, our communications officer, has recently published on the DFAT website the communications presentation, so we'll look at doing the same. Alright, another question is, will the sessions be different from this webinar? Yes and no. So yes, in that we'll probably have a little bit more time, so we'll probably have more questions from people involved, but overall no, we will be going through what accreditation is and the changes that have been made and the tips for preparation that are available in the manual. And the presentations really won't be any different to anything that's contained in the manual anyway, but I'm sure you'd all love to hear me present again anyway. Okay, more questions. How often will you review the criteria? So at this stage we roughly review the criteria around every 5 years. Saying that, if there is a massive change to anything in the sector or at DFAT, we will review the criteria. Or if DFAT comes out with a new policy that we want all NGOs to abide by, that will be updated in the criteria. So we try not to do a review too often, but around five years is normally the right amount of time. Okay, are there any other questions that anyone may have? Either for myself or for Belinda as well. Okay, I can see a person writing. Excellent. People are thanking me, so thank you all. Thank you for registering. I hope you did find it useful. I think Melanie's asking whether there's a forum that you all could keep in touch on. I think I heard rumours that there may have been an ANCP group on that ACFID communities of practice, but I'm not sure. We'll take that on notice. Get back to you. All right, so that looks like all the questions, I think, unless there's one more. No. So thank you all very much, and good luck with all your accreditation applications.
That brings us to the end of the webinar, everybody. A big thank you to Rebecca and Belinda for running us through all things ANCP accreditation. It's fabulous to have them in today. We will be circulating the slides from today's webinar. We'll also be putting the recording up on the ACFID YouTube channel, so stand by for an email that comes out early next week that gives you all the details. At the end of this webinar, so very shortly, we will be putting up a link to a quick survey. It's only 5 questions, and it would be fabulous if you could click through and answer those 5 questions. And while I have your attention, I might just do a cheeky plug for our next webinar. July is Innovation Month, and so we'll be celebrating by having the team from the Innovation Exchange at DFAT come in and give us a webinar about innovation and how you can integrate innovation into your work. So if you want to register for that webinar, head to the events page on the ACFID website. And we hope to see you for the next webinar. So thanks everyone for your participation, and have a great afternoon.